What is up, guys, and welcome to a brand new tier list that is brought to you directly from my people over at Patreon. This is this month's Patreon pick, and it is Movie Monsters, our creature feature tier list, where I've compiled a list of I think 52 different iconic movie monsters, and we're going to rank them all based off of these tiers that I have created. And even though there's a ton of them here, of course, there's going to be some that have been left off. My rule was basically that I have to at least have some experience with them. I have to have seen a movie or a TV series or something where I have a point of reference for these monsters. And also there's a number here where you have like vampires or werewolves or zombies that I do consider to be movie monsters, but there's just so many of them, especially with vampires. There's so many different iconic vampire characters that we're just going to rank those as kind of an overall category. So with all that being said, guys, we got 5 categories here that we're going to be ranking these off of. And starting off at the bottom tier, we have Some Kind of Mistake, little Metallica reference for my heavy metal fans out there. These are the ones that I think are just absolutely awful. I don't like at all. Dollar store scares, ones that aren't necessarily as bad as the bottom tier, but not really a big fan of them. Staying power, the ones that I think there's something cool about them, but they're not necessarily top tier for me. Nightmare fuel, now we're starting to get into the really good ones, the ones that I really enjoy, and then the absolute A-list top tier movie monsters, the perfect specimen. As I said, guys, this is a video brought to you by the people over at Patreon, which are my crowdfunding supporters. If you want to consider that, please check the link in the video description for that. There's a bunch of different tiers of perks that I offer for different levels of support, and one of them is the ability to choose a video topic every single month that I call the Patreon pick, and this is the most recent one. So thank you guys over on Patreon, as always, for your support, and for anybody even considering becoming one of those Patreon members, thank you as well. And with all that being said, we'll kick this thing off in a complete random order, as I prefer to do it with these. We're starting off with Swamp Thing. Now, there's a bunch of different varieties of Swamp Thing. Technically, he is one of the Universal monsters. I have not seen any of those black and white films. I've actually only seen the Wes Craven film, and this is a picture from the Derek Mears version, which was a short-lived TV series. So, because I don't have a lot of experience with him, he might be at a little bit of a disadvantage, but I think that the Swamp Thing has some staying power. I think there's something cool about him. There's something cool about the look. I do like the idea of having like a swamp humanoid type thing. I just haven't seen the best that this character has to offer, because if you haven't seen my Wes Craven ranking, I'm not a huge fan of his movie. So that one's a little bit of a disadvantage, but still wanted to include it in there. Now we have The Thing. And look, this is going to be like the least surprising placement of all time, but perfect specimen. The Thing is often what I call my favorite horror film of all time. It's either that or The Lost Boys, and I think it is the scariest iteration we've ever gotten of an alien or a extraterrestrial. I think that it's just gnarly, it's wild, it's scary, it's terrifying, so much paranoia involved. So I could gush about it for hours, but I've talked about The Thing ad nauseum. That is one of the best executed and just like best ideas of a movie monster of all time in my mind. Now we have The Predator, and we're going right back up into the top tier, baby. The Predator is an absolute perfect movie monster. Now, this is one of those characters that like is equally terrifying and equally cool as fuck. There's like something about the style of the Predator where he just always has kind of like this cool swagger to him. Maybe it's the different tech. Maybe it's the way that you're slowly revealed to the monster throughout the first film. Maybe it's just the fact that he's a hunter who's just out to kind of get the most badass prey out there. I'm not really sure, but I always loved the look of the Predator. The voice is iconic for a little bit that we get to experience. And while the franchise certainly has massive up and down swings, he's a movie monster or a creature that I always look forward to seeing a new iteration for. So very excited to check out Predator Badlands here very soon. Now we have the T-1000. So I included 2 of the characters from the Terminator franchise, the ones that I found to be the most iconic. And the T-1000 is another one for me where I'm going to stick it up into perfect specimen. Terminator 2 is probably my second favorite movie of all time behind Die Hard, and the T-1000 is one of the reasons for that. I think it is the perfect villain for the Terminator franchise, where you look at the T-800 and you go, how can you make that scarier? How can you advance that at all? And you go to the T-1000, and there's a reason why, one of the reasons why, that the sequels after Terminator 2 have kind of failed to deliver for a lot of people, and it's because you kind of reached your peak here. Like, you can't have a new monster that is more iconic or more threatening or more of a perfect specimen, quite literally, than the T-1000. Like when they went over to the TX, it's like, that doesn't seem like it's anywhere near as effective as the T-1000. A guy that can turn liquid metal, that could morph just like the Thing into, recreating any single human being to infiltrate certain things. The way that he just heals immediately from everything, the way that he runs and has just no depletion of energy whatsoever with the performance from Robert Patrick. The T-1000 is fucking awesome. So yeah, we're starting off good here with the top 3. This might be a very top-heavy list. We'll see. Now we have the killer clowns from outer space. Also, I need to say, there's probably going to be some debate in the comment section, is that a movie monster? That's actually an alien. Look, anything that qualifies under some version of monster, I decided to include here. There's a couple of horror icons in here that I think qualify as movie monsters. So this is just my own interpretation of the word and what I categorize it as. And I do think that this iteration of aliens, these little killer clowns, I would categorize as a movie monster. And for me, they're going to go into dollar store scares. I've never been a huge fan of that movie. I know it's got some fun edge to it. There's a lot of nostalgia at play there that I just don't have because I didn't watch the movie until I was in my 20s. It's fun enough if you're in the mood for it. It's a fun little gateway horror movie. But I've just never really found the killer clowns to be all that awesome of characters. Maybe if they got a couple of sequels, maybe if there was some kind of a modern remake or something, they could get there for me, but never been huge on them. Now we have werewolves, and I love me some werewolves, but I'm going to stick them up into nightmare fuel just because werewolves don't have the strongest slate of films. I've got the one pictured here from American Werewolf in London that I think is most people's favorite. The Howling is one that I would say is a close second for a lot of people. I really enjoy Silver Bullet. Of course, you got the Underworld movies that is very much love or hate style stuff. There's a bunch of other smaller ones, but werewolves haven't always got the best run as far as the quality of movies, and so I think that holds it back a little bit in my mind. But the ones that are really good, like American Werewolf for London, absolutely iconic. The idea of a werewolf, of this, beast that comes out when the full moon is out. I love the idea of it, and I really hope that one day we start to get more of a werewolf resurgence where, as much as I love vampires, I want to see werewolves kind of get their due at some point, and it feels like they're always kind of the underdog of the movie monsters. Hopefully one day that'll change. Now we have Anaconda. So there's a couple of massive animal attack creatures in here that I do think kind of cross the bridge over into movie monster. And I'm going to stick this one also in dollar store scares. Part of it's that I've never been crazy about the movies, and I haven't seen Anaconda since the 90s, so maybe I'd like it now for some goofy charm. But a gigantic snake, I'm not terrified of snakes. I definitely don't want to go up on a rattlesnake or anything like that, but my wife is deathly afraid of snakes. I'm not quite like that, so a movie monster version that I think is also very obviously like an animatronic doesn't really scare me at all. So I don't hate it, but it's not one of my favorites. This message is sponsored by Rincon. It's Rincon's anniversary, and the Essential Open Earbuds are stealing the spotlight because they're now 30% off. Just like a lot of you, I like listening to podcasts and music and YouTube videos while I'm doing things around the house. The problem is, before long, earbuds and headphones begin to be a little uncomfortable, not to mention that any time that my ears are closed off from the world, that's the time that my kids or my dogs decide to get into something that they shouldn't. Well, now with Rincon's Essential Open Earbuds, that is a problem of the past. The Essential Open Earbuds are so lightweight that I genuinely forget that I'm wearing them, and they're built for life on the go, so they slip on effortlessly and stay there all day long. And because they fit over your ear canal and don't block you out to the world, I can stay completely aware whether it's traffic when I'm walking, my kids in the house, or waiting for my name to be called at a cafe. These babies got 8 hours of battery life per charge, plus an additional 36 hours with the rechargeable case that is capable of wireless charging. So if you're looking for a pair of earbuds that move with you, the Essential Open Earbuds are the way to go. So click the link in the video description or go to buyraycon.com/Cody Leach Open to get 30% off of your order of Essential Open Earbuds. And thank you so much to Rincon for sponsoring today's video. Now we have Bagul. This is the entity, the demon, the monster, whatever you want to call him, from the Sinister movies. And when you average out how much people love Sinister with how much people hate Sinister 2, I think he averages out right there in the middle with staying power. I think there's a lot of cool elements to Bagul. I think the lore there is interesting. They didn't find the best way to get that lore across. I always think that the Vincent D'Onofrio character in the first film is such an exposition dump that it's almost jarring. But there was so much potential there for them to follow up Sinister with a great sequel that could have made Bagul an absolute instant horror icon, and some would still say that he is. But that movie absolutely dropped the ball. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to it, although I do think there's a lot of potential for them to go back and right their wrongs. There was actually a point where Bagul was going to cross over with Insidious, and Insidious and Sinister were going to be established as being in the same universe, but that idea never came to fruition. And you only have that type of idea being talked about if there's absolute staying power with that character. And so the fact that you have somebody that kind of operates through these Super 8 films and corrupts the children into murdering their own families and stuff, like it's a really creepy idea. You know, there's somewhat of a justifiable reason why the movie Sinister has been like scientifically named as the scariest movie of all time. One of those reasons is Bagul. So I like him. Now we have the Mother. This is the creature from Barbarian. And I absolutely love Barbarian. I know it's kind of a love or hate movie. It is absolutely my type of thing. And this one's actually going to go up into nightmare fuel for me because there's just so much that is horribly disturbing about the actual reality of this character, that it's just a woman that has been, you know, evolved through incest basically and being held and evolved in this dark cavern-like environment where she just wants to protect what she thinks is her babies, but it's a very tragically demonic type of character. So I don't think we're ever going to go back to Barbarian and get a sequel. At least I hope not. That's so a one-and-done movie to me, but for what that character represents, with not only just being literal nightmare fuel with how terrifying it is, especially the first time that you see it, and starting to uncover the real tragic and disgusting nature of what the creature is, I think it absolutely stands out for me. Now we have the T-800, Arnold Schwarzenegger from the original Terminator, and this is another one that goes up into Perfect Specimen. I think it's a very healthy argument of which one is the better villain, the more iconic or the more scary villain, the T-1000 or the T-800, and I would not argue with either one of them, but the absolute unstoppable killing machine, that is the T-800. It's one of the best movie monsters of all time. It's the best iteration of like a AI or a cyborg movie monster. And for those that are going to argue that Terminator is not horror, whatever, Terminator 2 onward, you totally have a point. The original Terminator, to me, is a horror film that has a lot of slasher elements. So there's going to be somebody that argues that they're not a movie monster because it's not horror. No, I reject your logic. Anyway, T-800, absolutely one of my favorites. I love those movies. They have to go top tier for me. Now we have Brundlefly. This is Jeff Goldblum's character from the David Cronenberg film The Fly. Another one that goes right up into Perfect Specimen. I mean, what a disgustingly effective movie monster. Right there with The Thing. I mean, it's like some of the best utilization of practical effects to just get that vomit-inducing reaction out of its audience. There's such a tragic nature to the character that also brings so much emotion to it, where when you get to the end and he literally like holds the shotgun up to his head, like you're sad. It's a devastating moment. Even though this monster is horrific and needs to be put down, you're like, no, fuck, there's got to be another way. But just a creative spin on that black and white original movie where you have the little transportation pods and the scientist, Seth Brundle, his DNA starts to merge with this little housefly that was inside of there. And slowly he just turns into this diabolical monster that's his skin starting to deteriorate. His fingernails are falling off. His teeth's falling off. He has to vomit on his food. He's crawling around like Spider-Man. He's got super strength. He's snapping arms and stuff like that. Absolutely iconic monster. Now we have zombies, and I got Bud the Zombie here as our little our thumbnail, I guess. And I'm going to say zombies have staying power. I'm not a zombie fanatic. Now, there's some zombie movies that I think are better than others. Like, I really love the Dawn of the Dead remake and the original. I really like Day of the Dead here with Bud. I think that the 28 Days Later franchise is really great, even though people debate zombies, infected, whatever. Same category-ish. Zombieland. There's a number of others that I do love, but zombies, I think, also are some of the most overexposed movie monsters, especially with the existence of The Walking Dead. Over the last like 10, 15 years, they've become the prominent thing in horror. Not so much maybe over the last few years, but for a while there, zombies were just running rampant throughout horror media. And so I'm a little burnout on them. I am excited, though, about this year's 31 on 31, diving into a number of zombie films I haven't seen in years and some I haven't seen, period. So it should be fun, but zombies for me, whether you're talking about the fast or the slow zombies, just the whole subgenre there, I think has staying power, and they've had proven staying power to be around since the 70s. Now we have the monsters from the Descent, which I think are called the Crawlers or the Cave Crawlers or something like that. Another one that I think has staying power. I think that first film is awesome. It's one of the best horror films of all time. The sequel I liked when I first watched it, but I was also very young. I don't imagine I would like it so much as an adult. I've yet to revisit it, but I think they're a great one and done movie monster. I don't think the Descent lends itself into being a franchise. There's a lot of people that don't even think the second film was worth having, so that kind of proves the point there. But there's something really cool about the way that they're executed. There's not necessarily something really unique about who they are. It's just these little monsters inside of a cave. They're like almost like bat people. So it's almost a variation of like what we saw in Barbarian and some other things where, you know, a human being that is kept in a certain condition just evolves to be this monstrous thing. We've seen versions of that throughout horror and sci-fi all the time. But there's something about the way they're executed in The Descent where they're very ferocious, they're very terrifying, that makes them a little bit more iconic than most. So we're going to stick them there. The Creeper. This one, look, we're going to have to handicap my score a bit on like how much I actually like the movies because I really only love the first one, and 2 of these 4 movies are absolutely god awful. But I still think that the Creeper is a perfect specimen. I think that's one of the coolest movie monsters of all time, just for the creativity of it. I mean, you have this creature that's like this hell demon bat that is presented to us at first as a human being, like serial killer, and starts to have like some kind of a very clearly some form of immortality to it with how long they've been killing. You got the whole Sistine Chapel of Bodies. And then it starts to hunt down the 2 main characters and slowly starts to shed that seemingly human quality and shows more and more what monster it actually is with the bat wings and everything. I love that original Jeepers Creepers. I understand the Victor Salva thing and stains it for sure, but as a film, I think it's one of the best horror films of all time. And despite the fact that I think that, you know, Jeepers Creepers 2 is a sizable step down, I still have fun with that movie and the way that they continue to advance the lore of the Creeper and how it regenerates body parts and certain things that it does and weapons that it uses, I think is pretty awesome. And while I unfortunately do think that, you know, Jeepers Creepers is a franchise, you need to just take behind the barn and Old Yeller its ass at this point with how bad the 3rd film and how abysmal the 4th film was, I still hold on to a little bit of hope that maybe with enough time, of a serious filmmaker with a decent budget will come back and actually give the Creeper a movie that he deserves. But as is, I think it's probably just safe to assume that the first film is the one that we're going to have to hold as iconic, and the other ones, you know, maybe save for 2. I know it has some fans. The other ones are just going to be like, you know, some things that we have to pretend just didn't happen. And now we're at Critters, or I should say the Krites, probably more appropriately named. And look, I have some close friends that are going to be very upset that I said this, but I just don't get the appeal. I don't hate them, so they're not going to go bottom tier, but dollar store scares for me. Very clearly, these were a ripoff of Gremlins, which I enjoy significantly more. I can have fun with the first Critters film, and I think I even like the second film a little bit more. There's a little bit more 80s cheese in there. But as a franchise, this is one of the worst ones that I've covered. I don't understand the appeal to them all that much, especially from people like my buddy Brian Lomax, who's usually borderline snobby with the type of movies that he likes and ones that he doesn't like. It's like Critters is the one that broke through, Brian. Still don't understand that, but nonetheless, we all have our quirks. But yeah, I don't know. The idea of these little eating machines that can turn into little fur balls and roll away, and they can turn into a big giant ball. I don't know. It's just not for me. So, yeah, if you're a Krite fan, I'm sorry. I'm not one of you. Sorry. Moving on from that, one that I almost didn't include, but to me, I think it does fit. We have Christine here, the haunted car from the John Carpenter / Stephen King story. This one for me, I'm going to stick up in a Nightmare Fuel. A lot of that's fueled by how much I absolutely adore the movie. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. It is in my top 3 John Carpenter films of all time. It is my favorite John Carpenter score. It's a movie that means a lot to me. So that's fueling it quite a bit for such a simple monster, which is just a car with some kind of a demonic or a ghost presence inside of it. But I think that the execution of this specifically in the John Carpenter film makes it nightmare fuel. You think about this car that is out for revenge, can repair itself, that is sentient. And the whole movie, you're like, I don't know if Arnie's in the driver's seat. I don't know if he isn't. And they kind of leave it ambiguous. And either one, you believe it. But even just the headlights kind of looking like the eyes, like it's a demon coming after you. Like, I love Christine. Absolutely iconic to me. And certainly one that I would not want after me. Now we have Dracula. Now, I do have vampires on here at some point. I think Dracula is iconic on his own, that I wanted to separate the two. A lot of that's just because of the Universal movie monsters. I wanted to include as many of those as possible. But Dracula, I'm going to say nightmare fuel. Now, there's a lot of different versions of Dracula, a lot of different iterations. You can even get into Nosferatu and Count Orlok and all that if you really want to. So just like with vampires, it's almost like Dracula is his own subgenre within the subgenre of vampires, but he's an iconic character. Like Dracula is the main like head honcho vampire, has always been retried and redone. There's just images, specifically with that Bela Lugosi version, that I think is so iconic that I have to include it in there. As somebody who loves vampires, it's one of, if not the most important iteration of that type of monster. So maybe it's redundant when I get to talk about vampires, but I started off this list by getting pictures of all the Universal monsters and then went from there. So we're just having fun. We're just having fun. One that was actually a last-minute addition that I saw on a list is Dren. This is from the movie Splice. And, you know, Splice is a movie that's interesting because I think there's a lot of cool ideas to it. I think it's just twisted and ridiculous enough to where it's kind of fun, and then it totally loses me in the third act. And so it could have been a movie monster that I would have said is a very like unsung hero, almost like a dark horse. But at the moment, I'm going to stick it in dollar store scares because there's just weird execution here. You know, the movie basically boils down to the thought of like, if you could create your own little humanoid type of monster, would you be curious enough to fuck it? It's a wild movie, so if you haven't seen it, give it a shot. Now we have the sandworms from Dune. I don't have a lot to say about this one. I'll say staying power. I think it's a really cool visual, especially with the Villeneuve films. You know, they're the big, gigantic, like unstoppable forces in this world that people literally have to find a way to walk a different way to not summon them. So there's something cool there. I wanted to include it just for shits and giggles. Now we have the bug, the cockroach monster, the Edgar monster from Men in Black. And this is another one that I actually think has staying power. I've always thought that was a very cool movie, the first one. I love the look of that one. I think the CGI actually holds up pretty well for late 90s CGI. And there's something cool about a cockroach that is like an alien species that comes down and can rip the skin off of a human and wear it like a suit. And there's some really gnarly shit involved with that first Men in Black for being such a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, silly movie. So that was a fun one that I came across that I wanted to put on this list. The Headless Horseman, another one that I'm going to say is staying power, just for the iconic look of it. Now, my experience with this is with the animated movie as well as the Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton film. But technically, he's kind of one of the Universal monsters, I think. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, but he's in that neighborhood as somebody who's just been like a fable the entire time. So I think the look of having a headless horseman with a jack-o'-lantern and all that kind of stuff is just really badass. I do like the Sleepy Hollow movie. That's one of like the 4 or 5 Tim Burton films that I actually really like. And so that was one that I wanted to throw on here as one that just, whether it's the Halloween holiday or you're just talking about like old black and white type fable creatures, I think that one's pretty cool. Now we have Frankenstein's monster, perhaps the most iconic of any of these on here, honestly. He's the one that's, it's like the original movie monster. And I'm going to say staying power. I've never been scared of Frankenstein per se. He's never been a character that's really gone to nightmare fuel for me, but obviously he has staying power as we're still, to this day, we're a couple months away from getting Guillermo del Toro's iteration of that character. We're always going to get new iterations of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster and the Bride of Frankenstein, which I even have a version of that coming out, Maggie Gyllenhaal's film. So there's something about a reanimated corpse and what makes you human and what makes you inhuman that is just like this inherent kind of a theme with that character and his story that I think it just has this timeless nature to it, where we're always going to kind of be curious and seeing how we can push the boundaries of that and what we can do with it that's new. So very cool character that has staying power. Now we're on to vampires, and this one's going to look weird next to each other, but I'm going to put it up into perfect specimen, so it's not going to be right next to each other, but we have Jerry Dandridge as our picture here. Look, this one, absolute bias. I'm a massive vampire fan. Some of my favorite films of all time are vampire movies like The Lost Boys. I'm a sucker for a good vampire movie if they do it well. That's one of my favorite subgenres of horror right there alongside slashers, so I just love vampires as a movie monster. They've also had a much better deal than werewolves, where there's a significant amount of awesome, classic, iconic vampire movies. Whether you're talking about The Lost Boys, Fright Night, Near Dark, the different iterations of Dracula. I would throw in Blade in there. You know, you got the Underworld movies, which, as I said, is kind of love or hate, but I love those. The first two specifically. You've got things like Daybreakers, and I could go on and on and on. You know, fucking From Dusk Till Dawn is a huge one. So that is a movie monster that I am always excited to see come back. I'm glad that with the last couple of years, we're actually seeing a resurgence of that with things like Renfield and Abigail, which I loved. Nosferatu last year, which I loved. And so this is one that is always going to have a huge place in my heart. And if I ever do create a movie, I definitely think my first one's going to be a vampire film. So that's how special they are to me. Moving on, we have dinosaurs. So this is Jurassic Park, Primitive War, a bunch of other different movies. Jurassic Park and Jurassic World obviously being the biggest ones there. But I do think that dinosaurs count as movie monsters because that's literally what their function is inside of Jurassic Park. I mean, we're taking something that used to exist far before humans existed, and we're doing our iterations of these man-eating monsters walking around. So this one, to me, nightmare fuel. Now, the movies certainly have varying quality to them, but there's a reason why they always almost make $1 billion or just over $1 billion. I don't know what Rebirth is doing right now, but there's a reason why these movies have been so successful despite so many of them being so poorly reviewed. And it's because people fucking love dinosaurs. They love the idea of these gigantic monsters that were real, that used to roam the earth, coming back, and how do humans coexist with them? That's just an idea that's so tantalizing for us as an audience. The T-Rex has always been my favorite, but, you know, I love the raptors. The Spinosaurus is pretty badass. And despite the fact that I don't like the direction that Jurassic World continued to go as far as the more like mutantoid versions, I really like the Indominus Rex. So yeah, dinosaurs, we're going to stick up there in nightmare fuel. I think that Jurassic Park, the original, was the first film that I saw in theaters, and that turned me into a huge Jurassic Park fan, as well as a movie fan, as well as, you know, a number of other films. I literally had a raptor backpack my first year in school. So dinosaurs got a special place in my heart. They're going to go up there. Now we have the Ghoulies, and this is a major disadvantage because I have not seen all of the Ghoulies films. I've seen a number of clips. I've seen pieces of the first film. At least I believe all the pieces I've seen of the first film. It used to play on like Cinemax or something like that back in the day. All I really knew about Ghoulies for a long time was that Wasp did one of their songs for, I think, the soundtrack of Ghoulies 2, and I always liked that song. But yeah, Ghoulies to me is like the third-rate version of a Gremlins ripoff. Now, they did come out technically like a year before Critters, I believe. But as far as the hierarchy goes, you have Gremlins to me, which is like the top tier of like the little mini movie monsters. Then you have Critters, that is a far step below that of trying to rip off Gremlins. And then Ghoulies is another kind of version of that it's like halfway between Gremlins and like the Puppet Master things, which I don't know, maybe I could have put Puppet Master on here too, but I've seen 2 out of the 25 of those films. I don't get the appeal of Ghoulies. It's going to go down to the bottom. Now, maybe if I watched 1 and 2 as a kid, I'd like it a little bit more, but I think it's kind of telling that the iconic image of Ghoulies is this one coming out of the toilet. Need I say more? Not a fan. Not for me. Now we have Godzilla. And look, I'm not a big Godzilla guy. I'm not a big kaiju guy whatsoever, but I got to at least stick him in staying power. I think that speaks for itself. Godzilla is probably the most iconic here, alongside of maybe Frankenstein, as far as movie monsters. Certainly the most iconic of the kaiju variety of movie monsters. You know, he's the king of the monsters. And so there's one Godzilla film that I've seen that I genuinely enjoy, and that is Godzilla Minus One. I thought that was a really good movie. All the other Godzilla films, I'm like, there's moments that are cool, but I don't really get it. Whether you have the serious ones, like the Gareth Edwards film, whether you have the more ridiculous Hollywoodized versions like Godzilla vs. Kong, like there's moments that are cool, but I just don't get much appeal out of gigantic CGI monsters punching each other in the face. So Godzilla is kind of one that's lost on me. Now we had the Cenobites, which I did think qualified, and we're going to stick them into dollar store scares. Now, Pinhead, I do think is pretty iconic looking, and I do like the Cenobites look, but look, you can't ignore the fact that like the movies and the way that the Cenobites are used have just been such a disservice for way more times than not. I think they're utilized well in the first two films. The third film I really enjoy, but it kind of turns them into these generic slasher movie monsters, which I don't think is really, serving the characters well. And then I like the version that we got in the remake that apparently didn't succeed all that much, which is a shame. All the other movies, Pinhead and whatever Cenobites, which is usually just Pinhead, they're just tacked on. So I think there's a lot of unrealized potential with the Cenobites. There's a lot of potential there for them to do something cool with. And I think the remake actually started the ball rolling on that, but I think people are just so burnt on Hellraiser, they just don't care anymore. So Cenobites, the look is carrying them quite a bit. Beyond the look of them, that kind of sadomasochistic sexual nature of them, I just don't think they've been utilized well in their movies at all, enough to say that they have staying power or anything like that. Like they've clearly had staying power, but not for reasons that are good. Now we have Imhotep, the Mummy, and this one I absolutely love. We're going to stick that up into Nightmare Fuel, specifically that 1999 version. I have not seen the black and white version. I would eventually like to do a review series and a ranking on some of the Universal classic movies, just haven't had the time to do it yet. But I like that version. I am a fan of Mummy Returns. Not nearly as much as the first one, but I do like that one. And the Tom Cruise one was pretty rough. But the idea of Imhotep as realized in that 1999 film as this rotting corpse that slowly starts to, reanimate himself by devouring other people that open up this chest, and him having the power to manipulate sand and locusts and a bunch of other dead mummies and guards and everything. I just think it's badass. So yeah, the Arnold Vosloo version is really carrying the weight for that one, but I love Imhotep. Now we have the Deadites from the Evil Dead franchise, and I'm going to stick this up in a Nightmare Fuel. I think the Deadites are badass because there's a lot of variety to them. Like, I almost didn't include them, but to me, there's been such a variety on Deadites, whether it's just reanimated people, whether it's, the flying monsters from like the third film and the skeletons, whether you get into some of the other stuff that we've seen in a few of the other movies. Like, it's essentially demonic possession type creatures, but there's something extra about them. There's something otherworldly about them that makes them a little different. Even, adding in the Evil Dead remake or the reboot where you get the monster crawling out of the fucking ground and shit like that. Like, the Deadites are awesome. As far as like demonic possession style characters, those are by far my favorite. I think that they're scary, they're terrifying, there's a variety, there's a lot of gore and nastiness involved with them, cutting the tongues and stuff, that they're fucking awesome. So gotta love that. Now we have the alien from Nope. I didn't want to put aliens as a category on here because I don't know. For some reason, I don't think of aliens just in general as monsters, but I think there's been monstrous varieties of aliens like The Thing and this one, where this is literally a creature that is shaped like a UFO that eventually can, turn into other things and kind of advances as a monster. And this one, I'm honestly going to stick in dollar store scares. I don't think it's that particularly frightening. I think it was creative, but I also think that it's one of another victim of Jordan Peele's style, where it's metaphor over the actual surface level story and what you're going on for here. Like, the whole creature just kind of serves as a metaphor for fame, and there's a camera inside the thing. Like, it's layered and it's weird, and there's creativity there, but since Get Out, I feel like he really needs to hone in his metaphors and his allegories and everything and make them a little bit more sensical and not just go balls out wild with it. So yeah, I think that the monster in Nope is fine, but not one of my favorites. Now we have the Djinn from Wishmaster. I've only seen the first Wishmaster, and it's been a significantly long time since I've rewatched it. I think it's got a badass look to it, and there's a certain element to it where, asking for a wish and then have it turned on you in an evil way is kind of cool, but not enough experience with the character. I'm going to stick it in dollar store scares. I certainly don't think it's a terrifying creature, just kind of a interesting little thing. And I know it gets significantly more campy and goofy with Wishmaster 2 and 3. Maybe one day I'll watch them and rank them, but not high on the priority list for me, unfortunately. King Kong. Now, King Kong I do like more than Godzilla, but he's still going to go in staying power. Still a creature that I'm not like super enamored with. Again, just a kaiju thing. I'm not really huge on those types of movies, but the different iterations of King Kong I think are pretty cool. Whether you're talking about the classic story of him falling in love with the woman and, you know, crawling to the top of the Empire State Building and getting shot down as the tragic beast, or you're talking about the ridiculous Godzilla versus Kong variety. I'm a Kong guy over Godzilla, so we'll stick him there. Krampus. Not a big Krampus guy. Not a big Krampus guy. I don't really care too much for the movie Krampus. I've seen different iterations in like horror shorts and stuff. The evil Santa, like, to me, that's the Grinch. Like, maybe that's why the Grinch has always been there and there's no room for Krampus, but I just never really found that character to be all that interesting to me. Not a whole lot else to say about it. Leprechaun. This one's difficult because part of me kind of has some love for the Leprechaun as a 90s kid, and part of me acknowledges that these movies are pretty terrible. I'm going to give him staying power. I'm going to stick him in staying power. I think that he deserves a little respect. But yeah, the Warwick Davis version I do like quite a bit. I love the first film. I have fun with the third film. I think that Leprechaun Returns was pretty solid. I think there's potential to do something with it. Like, I know they had that short not too long ago that Michael Levy and company did. Some of the guys behind Terrifier, is they did their own little version of it. And I thought it was pretty solid. Now, it kind of is retreading some of the ground that Leprechaun Returns went up to, but I liked their version of it better. It seemed like it had a little bit more heart of the first film in it. So I'm curious if they're going to get a chance to actually realize that. Michael's a huge, huge Leprechaun fan. But yeah, as in general, I like the character enough to throw them there in the middle. The Invisible Man. This is another one that's a little complicated. I've never seen the actual Universal Monster version, but I love the Kevin Bacon version in Hollow Man. I love the version in Lee Winnell's film. And I think the concept of the Invisible Man, a guy that goes invisible, starts to go nuts, and then uses that power to evil, is pretty awesome. So I'm actually going to stick him in Nightmare Fuel, because just the concept there of, if you can't see the guy, like, you can literally get away with anything. And they pushed that to a pretty terrifying degree in the Hollow Man movie. Some people don't like that movie. I think it's pretty awesome. But, I mean, he literally turns into a rapist and a murderer, and it's just like, dude, this is fucked up, and you could literally get away with this. If it wasn't for the fact that we had to have, like, more of an action-packed third act, this guy could just rain terror over the earth, and nobody could ever stop him or figure out who it is. So it's a really terrifying concept when you realize it in certain ways. Now we have Tremors. I'm sure there's like a different name for the creatures, like the, you know, sandworms or something like that, but we're just going to call them Tremors. I've only seen the first film, and I'm going to stick them in dollar store scares. Now, again, there's a little ignorance that comes with that, because there's like, what, 7 or 8 of these movies. Maybe I would like some of the sequels. I enjoy the first Tremors. I think it's fun. I think it's campy. I have a good time with it, but I don't know. I don't find the Tremors to be particularly terrifying as much as just kind of a silly, fun movie monster, which is fine. But yeah, there's something about them where I kind of forget that they exist until I come across a poster. Like, it's very interesting that I almost didn't even include it into this list until I passed a poster, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that qualifies, doesn't it? So yeah, Tremors, I don't know. That's a question, actually. Do you guys think I would enjoy any of the Tremors sequels? Is there one that I should prioritize? That might be a franchise that would be fun to go through at one point. The Engineers. So I wanted to include them. I haven't got to Xenomorphs yet, but I included Xenomorphs, and the Engineers have sort of been pushed up to be like the second in command as far as big monsters in the Alien universe. Not huge on them. Dollar store scares. Like, I don't know. The lore and everything that got incorporated in those 2 Ridley Scott films, I'm just not a big fan of. I think there's great visuals. I think there's some cool elements about it. But, you know, even in Alien Romulus, when they started to get into the black goo and everything, I was like, oh, fuck, why do we got to acknowledge this? And I liked what they did with it. But, yeah, the Engineers, I don't know. I feel like it just muddied up the waters. Like, the Xenomorph is enough for that franchise. I know some people would absolutely disagree passionately. And even with Alien Earth, I haven't watched but 1 episode of it, but I know there's like some new creatures that get involved with that. Some people hate it. Some people love it. So I don't know. Engineers, for me, I'm just not really big on. Pumpkinhead. Now, there's what, 3 or 4 Pumpkinhead movies? I think there's 3. I've only seen 1. And the first one's a really cool little monster film. Not necessarily one of my favorites of all time, but it's very cool and creative. But the design of Pumpkinhead, I think he's one of the most badass movie monsters of all time. So he's going up into nightmare fuel for me. I love Pumpkinhead. There was talk a number of years ago about a remake to Pumpkinhead, and the director, the only thing he said about it is we're staying practical. We're doing puppets. We're doing full animatronics. We are not losing what made Pumpkinhead great, and that had me so excited, and we have yet to hear anything about it since. So I guess it's dead in the water, but Pumpkinhead is one that I would be full on board for a modern remake, because I think that's just a badass movie monster. Now, I don't think we have a name for this one, but this is the monster from The Ritual. And I'm going to say staying power just because I think it's got a really cool look. I think that there's a very interesting amount of creativity here that makes it very terrifying. Like most of the time you see it, it's in kind of that silhouette form. It's like a gigantic woodland beast plus having like a humanoid body on top of it that's holding arms up that are antlers plus arms that are dangling down. Like, it's a really fucking wild movie monster. In a movie that you did not expect to have a monster in it, by the way. It's kind of this cool little reveal. So not a whole lot else to say. I haven't seen the movie in quite a few years, so story-wise, lore-wise, I'm very much blanking, but the look of it is enough for me to stick it up there. Xenomorph, we're not even going to waste time. Perfect specimen. That's literally where that title came from. The Xenomorph is arguably the best alien of any design ever. Like, you know, I'm partial to the Thing, but the Xenomorph is so fucking creative because you have the different iterations of it with the face hugger and the chest burster and the alien queen. And, you know, you can get some weird variations of it later on with like the alien humanoid baby and stuff. But the Xenomorph is just an awesome, iconic movie monster. It's terrifying. Acid blood, impenetrable skin with the acid, and the fucking knife tail and the big gigantic phallic looking head. Like, it's just it's lightning in a bottle, to where like you have something really cool and creative on paper like the Engineer, and a lot of us are like, nah, the Xenomorph's all I need. I don't give a fuck about this other stuff. It's just because it's so awesome. So yeah, easy one up top. Moving on from that, we have Sam. Now, Sam, I didn't think of at first, but I realized after he takes off his little burlap sack, he is some kind of a monster. He's almost like a jack-o'-lantern type of skeleton type thing. He's only had one movie, Trick or Treat. I think there's maybe some talk of a Trick or Treat 2 at some point. We'll see if that happens. But I'm going to stick him up in a nightmare fuel because, look, Sam not only is just a creepy looking character, even before he's unmasked, but Sam has got such iconic staying power from having one film that wasn't even a big box office success that he's turned into a horror icon through like DVD sales and things like that. And there's not too many other characters I can give that for. So there's just so much cool about the character that he is a horror icon. He's this iconic image and this costume and this, figurine that we all buy based off of just like this wraparound character in an anthology movie that wasn't a massive success. So I think there's huge praise to be given for that. And I just really like the look of the character. Now we have Pennywise, and this one for me is going to go up in a perfect specimen as well. Whether you're talking about the Tim Curry or the Bill Skarsgård variety, I think the idea of Pennywise is terrifying. It's awesome. It's iconic. It's wonderful. I am partial to Tim Curry because that was the iteration of the character that actually terrified me as a kid. But I'm not going to argue with anybody that thinks that the Bill Skarsgård variety is much better. We got Welcome to Derry coming out very soon. I actually have screeners for that I need to watch here very soon. So Pennywise is probably, starting to get some competition from Art the Clown, but probably the most iconic clown horror character of all time by quite a bit. I mean, I believe, is the top grossing horror film of all time, the It Chapter 1, because something about Pennywise just taps into people's fear of clowns in a way that no other variety of horror clown can. So the fact that you have this terrifying clown on its surface that's mixed with this interdimensional monster with a mouth and a row full of teeth and the deadlights and all these different elements, like, it's so creative and layered and weird and fucked up and scary. And the fact that he just devours children, like, absolute classic movie monster. There's a reason why it's probably Stephen King's most iconic villain, in my opinion. Now, for the first time, and I think ever, we have a Star Wars character on here. How could you not include the Rancor? The Rancor, for me, is nightmare fuel. There's a reason why any monster that even remotely looks like this, we just call it a Rancor, because that's so iconic. That one little scene in Return of the Jedi is all we needed of this monster that devours people. And, it's very much presented in like a PG style way. but there's something terrifying about the Rancor. Even when you encounter him in certain Star Wars video games, you're like, oh, fuck, it's the Rancor. You know, we got whatever is it, the D-Rex or whatever bullshit we got in Jurassic World Rebirth, and it was just like, oh, so it's a Rancor, because it looked just like that. So that was one I almost forgot, but I was like, you know what, let me throw a bone to the sci-fi Star Wars nerds out there and throw it on a list like this, because he's absolutely an iconic movie monster that I think it's a very simple design, but it's so effective. Now we have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and, you know, I'm going to say staying power just for the comedy of it. Like, it's not a scary character, but it's iconic as hell. Ghostbusters is absolutely a celebrated classic. I think that third act is iconic, and, you know, so sometimes you can't even eat marshmallows without thinking about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man monster. And, you know, the fact that that turns into the big kaiju that's going to destroy New York City is pretty awesome. So we're going to stick it there just because I think it's fun. The Gremlins. The Gremlins, I'm going to stick up into Nightmare Fuel. I think they're awesome. I love the first Gremlins. Not a fan of the second one. Maybe one day we'll get a third. But I love the look, whether it's in the Gizmo format where they're very cute, or they're in the Scar format where they're very fucked up and weird and definitely scary. You know, Gremlins is one of those movies that finds a nice balance of being like kid-friendly and holiday and kind of goofy and fun, while also being pretty scary. Like, they're literally murdering people and setting fire to towns and taken over. And so it's a really, really cool monster design. And part of the reason why you have movies like Critters that has potential there that just doesn't measure up for me and a number of other people is because Gremlins just did it so perfectly that's like, you can't beat that. You just can't. I'm sorry. So yeah, I love the Gremlins, always have. Now we have the Blob. The Blob. I've never seen the original film, but I have seen the 1986, 87 movie, the Chuck Russell film. And that one is pretty fucking gnarly. So I'm going to stick it in staying power. It's not quite top tier for me, but it's one that I do think is really cool. This pink ooze that's just going to like devour you and turn you into mush and you can't escape it. Like, the dude getting pulled through the fucking sink is insane in that movie. That's one of the cooler horror remakes for sure. So the Blob, we're going to stick right there. At one point, there was supposed to be a Rob Zombie variety of that movie back after the Halloween movies, but obviously that never came to fruition. I'm very curious on what his take on that would have been. The Blob walking around with a fucking like tattoo or some shit like that. This is one that is the alien creature from The Faculty. So this is I believe our last, nope, not our last. It's got two more alien varieties. But this is, I don't know if they ever really gave a name to it. The water-dwelling little parasite monster, the alien from The Faculty. And I absolutely love this one. This one to me is going to go up into Nightmare Fuel. A lot of that's fueled by my love of the movie. But this is a very creative one where you kind of have a little bit of the thing in there, where you have an alien that can parasite and parasitically get its way into people's bodies and pose as humans, like human pods, and take over an entire town and eventually the world very quickly if you would not have stopped it. And so it has that quality to it, as well as the big giant payoff third act movie monster variety, which looks like this giant like almost lizard worm thing. That's a really cool design. So The Faculty, I think, is one of the most underrated horror films of my generation, and I absolutely love that monster. Now we have the Death Angels. These are for A Quiet Place, and I'm going to stick them in staying power. I really like the Quiet Place movies. I think that there's something cool and creative about the way that those movies are executed, with the characters having to be quiet and still getting so much depth out of everything. The actual design of the creatures, I've never been like totally enamored with. They're very CGI'd. There's something that's almost too otherworldly about them, but I like them. I'm a fan of them, of the three movies that we've gotten so far, and I look forward to the next one. So we're going to stick it there. Now we have Malignant. This is the monster from the movie Malignant, where you have the girl with her conjoined twin that's actually like inside of her skull and can like take over her body and snap her limbs backwards and take over her entire consciousness, except in reverse. Such a cool concept. It's a movie that I only liked in theaters, and then when I watched it at home, I like fell in love with it. Now it's one of my favorite James Wan films of all time. I'm going to stick it in staying power. I think that there's something really cool and unique about that design that I just absolutely love. And I think there's potential for a sequel. I don't think we're ever going to get one because it wasn't like this massive success, nor does it need a sequel. It can very much function as a one and done, but there's potential there. Now we have the Cloverfield monster, and while I like the movie Cloverfield, I'm going to stick this in dollar store scares. Now, supposedly, we're going to be getting a true sequel to Cloverfield at some point, But Cloverfield was more known for the style than the actual monster. The monster is obscured for most of the film, and you get very little payoff with the look of the monster. It's just like this kaiju type thing with a little bit more of a... It's kind of a cross between A Quiet Place and a kaiju. So I like it, not crazy about it. Now we have all the Winnie the Pooh characters from the Blood and Honey movies. So that's Winnie the Pooh, that's Tigger, that's Owl, Piglet. I don't know if we got to Rabbit or anything yet, but I'm going to stick this one in some kind of a mistake. I'm just not a fan of these movies. You know, I really hated the first one, and you guys know the history. I had some very bad blood with the creators of the movie because they did not appreciate how I expressed my opinion on that movie. And eventually we mended fences, and, you know, they're very cool guys. I do root for them. People definitely, there's some people that have a certain fandom for these films, and that's cool. It found its audience. I'm just not one of them. You know, I've watched 3 of them at this point. I watched the first one and hated it. I watched the second one, thought it was a massive improvement. Still couldn't say that I really liked it all overall. And then Peter Pan, which I thought had a lot of potential, which was kind of a big letdown for me. I have had no interest in checking out Bambi. I know Pinocchio's coming out, and I have some mild curiosity with that one just because Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund, is going to be doing one of the characters, but this is just a concept that's not for me. The way that they're executing it anyway. I think that this is such an inherently silly concept, and they're going so dead serious with it that it just doesn't mesh. It just doesn't make sense in my brain. So it's just not for me. That's as respectful as I can put it. As far as movie monsters goes, they're not going to make it high for me because it's just no. And finally, ending with an iconic one, we got Bruce the Shark here from the Jaws movies. Now, I almost didn't include Jaws because it's just a shark, and I was like, well, if I do that, I have to do Lake Placid and all these other ones. But I think Bruce the Shark has kind of crossed over into this movie monster quality because the Jaws original has literally been responsible for generations upon generations of people who are terrified to swim in the ocean. And there's something about Bruce the Shark that kind of crosses realms from just like traditional animal attack movie into movie monster. So I think it qualifies, and it's absolutely a perfect specimen. Like, it's simple. It's a real life animal, aside from, you know, the mechanical quality to it. If you know the behind the scenes of the movie, it's very much just like a great white with a bit of a chip on its shoulder. It's trying to take these guys out, and it's a man eater. And it's one of the greatest movies of all time, one of the most timeless movies of all time. And as I said, like the impact that Bruce the Shark has had on people's nightmares and actual phobias is stronger than any other character on this list. You know, there's no character on this list that's responsible for millions of people being afraid of something. There's just not. So, yeah, absolute perfect specimen to me, and a good way to cap off the end of this list with Bruce the Shark. So that is that one, guys. That is the movie monster creature feature tier list here. Were there any gigantic omissions that I missed? Most likely it's a movie that I haven't seen, but put some of your omissions down below on ones that you think should have been on this list and where you would have put them. If you want to make your own version of this tier list, as I said before, the link is going to be in the video description, so please feel free to do that. Tag me on Instagram or Twitter or wherever you want to post your version of this tier list. And if you have any more ideas for tier lists that you'd like me to do, throw that in the comment section as well, because there's a lot of fun varieties on this type of video that I enjoy continuing to kind of explore what all we can do. But that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release movie reviews. I'm also going to put my playlist up here of all of the tier lists that I've done. There's a huge variety of them up there if you enjoy these. We got certain types of franchises. We got directors. We got which horror icons I would survive, which was a really fun one. So check all those out. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.